Good day, everyone. This is Dr. Francois du Toit, your wellness coach and naturopathic doctor. This is episode 5 of the 7 Pillars of Wellness series. And today we're discussing gut health. Initially, in another version of the 7 Pillars of Wellness, this would have been the topic discussing diet and nutrition. But I believe in the 21st century, everything starts with what you are able to digest and not just the food that you eat. You may be able to afford the most nutritious, organic, healthy food, but if you don't have the digestive capacity to break that food down, it means nothing to your body. And when you start taking into account how many biological systems are influenced by the gut or the gastrointestinal tract, you'll start to appreciate the importance of this topic that we'll be delving into today. I'm very excited about today's topic because as a naturopath, and most naturopaths, we are taught to appreciate and actually specialize into the gut, which actually says a lot because our training is like the jack of all trades when it comes to all the different elements that affects our health. If you think about how much in the 21st century has caused dis-ease and how many different tools we are taught, like even, as all these 7 pillars of wellness are so vast and each one deserves its special time and attention. It's got so many subcategories to it. If you can imagine that we as naturopaths suddenly decide to specialize in something, it says a lot. It adds a lot of weight to this topic. My journey actually with dis-ease really started with tremendous gut challenges. Like so many babies being born, I had almost debilitating colic that drove my parents up the wall. I remember this story my mom taught me. She said that, Francois, as a baby, this was my first year or two of life, you were this child that would just cry and cry and cry endlessly. And if I just thought you were just getting to sleep, I would put you down, you'd start screaming and crying hysterically again. And it was related to my gut. And they knew it. I was diagnosed with colic. Even my grandmother said, wow, this child, I can't get him to fall asleep. It's a really painful thing. And it's really got to do with so many factors in terms of what we are brought into coming into this world. If you take into account root cause based diagnosis of things, how many children are born by cesarean section or C-section? Now, I'm not trying to bash any woman that has gone that route. There are many reasons why that is necessary and sometimes essential. But when we take into account how the gut health influences every area of our life, including the brain function, the immune system, our ability to even digest nutrition so we can build a healthy and strong body. Do we think about when we are born by C-section, our first exposure to the microbes of the world is what is then present in that moment in the air, maybe in the hospital or wherever the C-section is performed. That's going to be in a hospital, where we are designed to receive and go through human design for optimal health is to be born vaginally, and then we are inoculated by the vaginal flora, our mother's microbes, which are in essence the cultures of organisms that inoculate the gut, that preps the body, preps the digestive tract to thrive. It's an inheritance that we receive from our mothers. And there's so many studies on this subject to say that how much healthier, how much smarter, how much more resilient, how much more able children are to handle mental emotional challenges you become just by being exposed to the normal vaginal flora from birth. So it really starts there, and I know, I had those challenges and I was born vaginally, and which is a blessing. You can imagine how many children are facing challenges because of just this. And when you think about, when we start going deep into this subject of gut health, we need to take a step back, because then we don't recognize the real importance of what constitutes what the gut or the gastrointestinal tract is doing. It's almost safe to say that more than 50% of what your gut does relies on the microbiome. Now, the microbiome, which has been more extensively researched in our generation than ever before, talks about all the different amazing organisms, microbes, that take up their living space in the lining of the gut itself. Now, you can relate this to like the jungle in your gut. Now, when you think about a jungle, which means it is a completely adapted, diverse, interdependent system with immense complexity. This is the type of environment we find in our gut, consisting of viruses and bacteria and fungi. And this is really what constitutes, and even parasites. We get so fear-mongered about so many of these categories of microbes that I'm talking about. But did you know that the majority of all of these microbes, and that actually includes the viruses and the parasites, are in a symbiotic relationship with us? It's a very rare amount of those organisms that are harmful to the body. Now, I'm not saying we don't see an increase of those harmful microbes in our modern 21st century. We do. Because a lot of the responses of the body to produce more of the unhealthy viruses and bacteria and parasites is actually due to the toxins that we are exposed to. When the body is exposed to toxins in the gut itself, the body's defense mechanisms actually produces bacteria that is designed to break those toxins down, especially parasites. And then we often are confused and blame the viruses and the bacteria and whichever organisms you're looking at. But it's actually a homeostatic response of the body, meaning it's a response of the body trying to restore itself to balance. And these so-called disease-causing bacteria and viruses or parasites are there to increase and absorb and break down and actually eat those toxins. So it's actually part of the vital response of the body. Now, in a healthy gut environment, all of these microbes are working together to break our food down, to produce byproducts, because you can't live or build a healthy body from any number of building blocks that you associate with food or nutrition. Now, I'm talking about things like, let's talk about the macronutrients. I'm talking about proteins and fats and all of these, and carbohydrates, all of these constituents of the diet. And I'm not talking about even vitamins and minerals yet. But if you take all of them into account, none of those nutrients mean anything to your gut itself or to your body in that form. You can't do anything with it up until the point that those foods are synthesized by your microbiome, broken down and broken down and broken down again to eventually be the nutrients that your cell can absorb, and then even the smallest of organelles inside of your cells. And here many people are aware of the vital role of the mitochondria for producing energy. So that initial phase of breaking these molecules down is the microbiome and all those microbes working for you. And what most people don't know, and this I'm so thankful to have been taught by especially one fermentation expert, is that when we have a healthy microbiome, especially in diversity, and I want to say healthy, I should probably define this. Many people think that this healthy microbiome, and I haven't even touched on probiotics. This ties into probiotics. Most people think and probiotics are healthy bacteria, for those who have not heard about it before, and coming from different fermented foods. Many people focus on probiotics and think that it's all about quantity, meaning if I drink a liter of kombucha, or if I drink 4 capsules of probiotic supplements every single day, and I just load myself with these probiotics, it's going to fix my gut and fix my microbiome. And it's exceptionally helpful. It's an excellent approach, actually. But it's not about that quantity, like loading yourself with a ton of probiotics. The microbiome thrives with a diverse ecosystem of organisms, meaning a very large number of different strains of these organisms, of these probiotics. And how do you achieve that? Well, it looks more like drinking kimchi on Monday, eating kimchi on Monday, and drinking kombucha on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday you're having molkefir, and so on and so on. Rotating and bringing in a different cultured food or a different probiotic strain of supplement and rotating them, because then you build a diverse gut microbiome. And that is the healthiest, the most optimal, the most resilient gut you can find. Now, when this comes to play, something else, this magic that I actually learned from my fermentation expert came to me, and this she read in a textbook on fermentation, is that when you have this diversity and thriving microbiome, you actually produce more nutrition from the same meal as someone else that is not having that diverse or healthy microbiome. Maybe up to 3 or 4 times more. Let's say, use an example. In this environment, your gut might be able to produce, your microbiome actually is able to produce 3 to 4 times more vitamin A than this person sitting next to you, or 3 to 4 times more of the B vitamins than the person sitting next to you. Now, the list can go on. Can you imagine the implications when you're having the same meal, but your microbiome is synthesizing such a variety, such an abundance of nutrients, just because your gut and the gut flora is producing more nutrients for you, working in your favor? Now, this is mind-blowing research. And to delve even into the other core essence of why people should focus and think about improving their digestive function or gut health is the remarkable science of the gut-brain connection. We have learned that, and this has especially been popularized and exceedingly expertly researched by Dr. David Perlmutter. I remember the first book of his that I picked up, it's on my bookshelf, called Grain Brain, being such a revelation in terms of what the gut does for us and what foods can do when they do damage the gastrointestinal tract. And in his book, a couple of chapters in, he actually said, I would call some people in my field of research, as they're going deeper, they actually said, he mentioned, some people call the gut the second brain. Oh, I should backtrack here a little bit. Dr. David Perlmutter is a world-renowned neurologist. Now, to become a neurologist, you needed to have studied to become a medical doctor, which depending on the country is maybe 6 or 7 years. And then you have to additionally study and specialize for another 5, 6 or 7 years to become a neurologist. So we're talking about 10 or 12 years just to become a neurologist. And Dr. David Perlmutter, at the time of his revelations and writing these books, had been in practice for many, many years, very successful practice. And when he started treating his patients, and he's mostly treating his patients with medications, especially psychiatric drugs for the different brain conditions they come with. And then he's changed and he thought and read about how taking gluten out from a diet can improve the brain health and reverse and potentially cure different brain conditions like ADHD and the like. He said, what can I lose? The next patient I see, I'll treat them this way. And it was a young boy with a spectrum of autism or ADHD. And he said to their parents and the child, we're going to take you off gluten for 3 to 6 months and see what happens. And wonder by wonder, this boy's health improved dramatically, and he reversed, and I believe he was actually cured from this, the mental health, the gut, the brain condition that he was suffering from. And this really turned him on to this line of research of the gut. So Dr. David Pumat is the leading researcher in the gut-brain connection. Now, in his book, The Grain Brain, a couple of chapters in, he said, my colleagues and people that are, in the research field at the moment would say that the gut is the second brain. But I myself would say that the gut is the first brain. Let the weight of that sink in. A leading researcher and a studied neurologist, brain specialist, is saying that your gut is your first brain. That is actually remarkable. And we know it instinctively and intuitively. When you're in love, you've got butterflies in your stomach, like bubbles. And you know that when you are stressed and your boss needs to speak to you, or whatever else happens in our day that is unexpected, we get knotted up and very tight and uncomfortable in our tummies, in our gut. So there, the gut brain is actually already there speaking to us. The neural connections from the gut to the brain is vast. And what's even more astounding and in many ways even more exciting, especially for me, is how the research has shown that from anywhere to 80%, and some research is even coming up to 90% of certain of the neurotransmitters are produced locally in your gut. Now, neurotransmitters are your brain hormones. These are things like serotonin and dopamine and the precursors to the endorphins. And these are precursor molecules that end up in these neurotransmitters form, especially serotonin being locally produced in the gut, which is such an important focuser and appetite regulator. It influences our attention and our mood in ways that the research will only tell us more and more about in the future. So you can really put your brain into like supercomputer mode, just to speak in the terms of how I grew up with technology and computers. You can upgrade the CPU of your brain. I'm not going to call brand names, but think about if you can afford the most expensive CPU for your computer and the computer works at the highest speed possible. Well, the equivalent of this in your own brain as the supercomputer is by upgrading your microbiome and improving your gastrointestinal health. What could you do with greater attention, more energy? How the spillover effects influences your mood, your positive or your feel-good emotions. Feeling more love, greater heights of joy, greater heights of gratitude, all stemming from you have taken care of a biological system in your own body, your gut. To go deeper into these subjects, I want to give maybe a wide lens view of what this looks like from day to day in terms of the practical outflow, because I'm sure you'd be itching to know a bit more of the practical tools to apply this to daily life. While everything in terms of any biological system starts with hydration. If you have a dried up gut and you're usually constipated as a result of that, you don't have the fluids available to transport all these healing molecules and nutrients in your body. In fact, certain research and findings have discovered that when your lips are dry and cracked, it's a sign that your gut is dry and cracked. And that is can be partly due to dehydration. And even there, it's more about the minerals than the water. 84 minerals are needed in water for it to absorb and be used effectively and optimally in the body. But then there's also the essential fatty acids. Because in this sense, in terms of, the dry lips or the dry skin syndrome, these can be more often, and in my clinical experience, I've been in practice 12 years, be related to essential fatty acid deficiency. So you need medicinal fats, you need healthy cholesterol to coat and absorb into your gut and literally moisten and help heal the tissues of your gut, which will then also have a domino effect of helping to heal and restore the tissues of and cells of every single part of your body. And that's including is omega-3 fats and coconut oil and butter. Now, not to give anyone any dietary advice, this is a free informational talk. You need to consult with your own natural medicine doctor or nutritionist to take on these steps into your own life, taking in mind your own health conditions and health outcomes that you're aiming for. But these are the broad brushstrokes of what I would see people need. And now when you've taken that into account for the gut, hydration and healthy fats, so it's not dry, but it's moist and actually functioning well, then you're thinking about your environment. This topic about gut health is actually subdivided into detoxification, and it deserves its own talk. And I trust I'll go into it in one of my other seasons of this podcast series. Because, and this is just the one secret that I'm willing to share here, and this comes straight from one of my mentors, at least an online mentor, in terms of his trainings. This is David Wolf, or like David Avocado Wolf, as he's rebranded himself in America, who has famously taught that detoxification is more important than nutrition. And that's all I'm going to leave for you for now, and you can go deep into that. And if you take into account that your gut is also one of the primary means of your body detoxifying and taking toxins out, and you're going to the bathroom to eliminate them, you start to understand why all of these puzzle pieces for optimal health comes to what your gut is doing and maybe what it's not doing. So we need to be able to understand that we need to have a healthy bowel movement every single day. And you can have bowel movement every day and still be constipated. And that's a story for a different discussion. You need to have your gut holistically assessed. You should ideally have a stool sample taken and have a genetic profile even done to check your flora content and see where the disease-causing microbes are potentially, and then where the lack of healthy bacteria are, so you can replenish them. And then I'm talking about in terms of environment. Yes, you're exposed to toxins because that will negatively influence your gut, in the food, in the water that you're drinking, if it's filtered or not, in the air you breathe, you're using air purifiers, and all of this we need to take into account, especially if you live in a highly polluted city, densely populated area. And then especially when I thought about environment, what I'm trying to say is think about your environment when you have a meal. When we have a meal, so we talk about the two branches of the central nervous system. The stress response is the sympathetic nervous system, and the calm peace response is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic system is also a vagus dominant system, and vagus nerve health is something also to delve into because it's so crucial to the gut-brain connection. When you can also call the parasympathetic actually rest and digest, which means that to be able to even absorb food and break your food down, you need to be in a calm, restful, relaxed state. Now, how many of us can say that that's the environments that we are eating in? Do we put aside enough time for breakfast or lunch or dinner to actually be able to rest and be calm? How is let's talk about the typical corporate office worker with their lunch break, if they even have a lunch break. How long is that? How stressed are they maybe from the work and then rushing to just gobble down a sandwich or whatever it might be in 10 or 5 minutes or sometimes less? Some people eat food so fast, and I'm not blaming you if that's you. It's for me, I just think, how is your gut going to break that down? And if you're in a stressful state, your body doesn't even recognize that as much food because it's not in rest and digest. People that are in a highly stressful state should actually just drink water and rather postpone their meal to a time where you are rested, calm, because then your gut is actually saying, I can break this food down. Because at the end of the day, why are you eating? We are eating in the end of the day to break that food down to nutrition, to vitamins and minerals, to build up your body. But how much of that food is actually becoming building blocks for your body when you're in a highly stressed state and the gut actually shuts down, it shuts off, doesn't want to break food down. It's ready to run from the lion or climb a tree or fight that enemy. It's not in a state to send any energy to your gut to break that food down for you, which will serve you in the end. I see we're almost coming into half an hour mark. I can talk hours and hours on this subject because this is what I'm so passionate about and I want to educate for more people. Well, with all of these episodes, I do like to round off with a quote, and this one was very straightforward for me. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, the Greek philosopher, said in his writings that all disease begins in the gut. So tell your doctor about how important the gut is in potentially reversing and curing diseases. And were you taught this? Were they taught about this? And share this message around so we can educate each other on supporting our health and our well-being so we can achieve optimal states of wellness. I'm thankful for having discussed this vast topic on the gut, and this can go on endlessly. I trust you have received a key for unlocking limitless potential for health in your body and in your mind, which then expands to your ability to think positively, be calm, feel more positive emotions than ever before. Literally, the single most expensive key to the most expensive Lamborghini or Ferrari or Porsche, whatever type of car you like, that you can imagine to make your body, in this sense, that like that car, the fastest running, most efficient system that you can imagine. Thank you, everyone. This is Dr. Du Toit signing off for today, and thank you for listening. Share this with everyone that you know so we can enrich and inspire others to live a life of optimal health and well-being.